Let's bring in my panel now. I've got New South Wales Liberal Party Vice President Tina McQueen and the Deputy Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, Daniel Wild. Let's start with the Liberals coming out swinging on the Voice referendum, accusing Labor of trying to rig it by not providing equal funding for the yes and no campaigns. This, as our soon-to-be ambassador to the US, Kevin Rudd, uses the anniversary of his sorry speech to the stolen generations to argue it would be embarrassing for Australia to pass on the Voice.
I shudder to think what the reaction will be across the world were this referendum to fail. If we are seen to turn our back on so simple a request from those who have been the custodians of this ancient land since the Dreamtime.
Oh, Daniel, he shudders to think. When we go to the polls for this referendum, should we be considering how embarrassing the result could be for Kevin Rudd at DC dinner parties?
Well, I think most mainstream Australians will quite safely ignore what Kevin Rudd has to say on this issue. But, you know, what's concerning to me is what Kevin Rudd said there is the Voice to Parliament is a simple request.
No, it's not.
It is not a simple request. It is a dangerous demand. It is being demanded by a small group of very noisy inner-city activists being promoted by the elite media and academia. And it is dangerous because it risks dividing our nation by race. It risks putting race at the very centre of the major policy decisions coming out of the federal government, and indeed allocating critical resources, economic resources, health resources, educational resources, not on the basis of need, but on the basis of race. This is a very significant proposal with long-term permanent consequences, and to have someone of the stature and imprimatur of Kevin Rudd and others to say that this is a simple request exemplifies how misleading many of the advocates of the Voice are prepared to be.
Tina, as far as the vote being rigged, as some are suggesting, is that the case here? Is the no vote going to get adequate funding?
No, it's not. It basically is rigged. Even if you choose to donate to the Yes campaign, it's tax deductible. If you choose to vote to the No campaign, it's not. In every way, this is skewered to try and get the Voice up. Absolutely right. And there has to be full declaration of who's donating. I mean, it's just disgraceful. I don't know how they get away with it, Rita, but that's the state of play at the moment.
And just wait until all the corporates and sporting bodies jump in. It is going to be quite a campaign. The Liberal Party needs to decide what it stands for and decide quickly. Now to another ambassador, this one, our ambassador for gender equality, because apparently we don't have it yet. She's the ambassador working hard to balance the scales between men and women and others.
I'm incredibly honoured to take on this role as the lead international advocate for Australia's commitment to gender equality and the human rights of women and girls and persons of diverse gender identities.
Tina, what do you make of all this? That clip, by the way, the longer version, it's gone viral and not in a good way. It's being shared and commented on. But what's your opinion on this?
Well, I must say that the whole video is scary, Rita, although she did have a starring role on Tucker Carlson recently. He too was amazed at this clip. This is an ambassador we have no need for in Australia. Perhaps if she looks closely at other countries where there are real problems with women, she could help there, but we certainly don't need an ambassador of this kind in Australia. It's ridiculous, and I'd like to give her some lessons how to blink, Rita, how to blink.
Well, no, we wouldn't say that, Tina, but I do wonder if I asked her the question, what is a woman, whether she'd be able to answer it, given, you know, her role is supposed to be to advocate for the rights of women, because it seemed that speech seemed to go in a couple of incoherent directions in my view. Daniel, I want to ask you about the Herald Sun's front page today, talking about household bills blowing out, households paying around $4,000 for gas and electricity, an enormous sum. Are we following the Brits in plunging people needlessly into energy poverty? We are sitting here in this country on possibly hundreds of years of gas supply, and yet gas prices are up 45% in a year. Can you blame that purely on Ukraine?
Well, it's due to self-inflicted policy, Rita, for many years on both sides of politics at the state and federal level. I mean, you've got policies like net zero emissions by 2050, which is pushing coal and gas off the market. You've got gas caps being put on, and you've got reams of red tape and regulation on our resources sector. Basic economics will tell you if you limit the supply of something, the price will go up. And that is exactly what is happening. The key issue here that you've highlighted is it's not the inner city elites that are incurring the costs. It's not going to be those living in Toorak or the North Shore of Sydney that will pay the price. It's working families and small businesses in the outer suburbs and the regions of this country that are paying the price through higher electricity bills and lost jobs in critical sectors. Things will only get worse until our political leaders unlock the resources. Like you rightly say, we have hundreds of years of baseload power. We just need to get on with the job.
Now, let's go to the US. The Super Bowl was on today. It was spectacular. But there was a moment of division right at the start. Apparently, America now has two national anthems, one for the black population and one for everybody else. Here's the black national anthem. This is a taste of it.
Lift every voice I see till earth and heaven.
Now, the real anthem, the one the whole population shares, including the black population, was incredible. One of the best renditions I've ever heard. But Tina, I wonder, are we going to see calls for a separate national anthem for the Indigenous community in Australia? I can just see the activists watching that and getting all sorts of ideas.
Oh, I hope not, Rita. I mean, that so-called black anthem is actually a hymn, so it's probably, it's probably better off sung in a church than a football match. And to see how the players were moved by the national anthem that was sung by that wonderful, wonderful singer on the guitar today, to see them in tears, I think it takes away from that. When you're diluting the strength of that when you present a so-called another anthem. So stop it now, and I hope it doesn't take off in Australia.
Yes, Chris Stapleton was the singer who sang the national, and he was so good, Daniel. It really was beautiful to see the patriotism return for a while there. We had the coach of one of the teams crying. We had other players move to tears. It's something that we don't really see in our sporting events. You rarely see the players actually sing the Australian anthem when major games are played.
So that's right, and we're much poorer for it. And we've looked into this issue of politics in sport, and the overwhelming majority of Australians, and this is the case around the Western world, they just want to get politics out of sport because, as you say, it brings us together. It should unify us rather than injecting this divisive identity politics into every facet of our life.
Absolutely, Tina. Sorry, you were saying that we used to sing it.
Yeah, years ago at the rugby matches when the Australian anthem was sung, or, the Wallabies, you couldn't find a dryer in the place. So things have drastically changed since then, but there was a time where our anthem moved us all at sporting games.
Well, there was a time when if there was going to be any politics in sport, it was at least unifying. Now the politics that's jammed down everyone's throats is just so divisive, and the sporting codes cannot get enough of it. And we're going to see it with The Voice. I am certain we're going to have the AFL, the NRL, all the other sporting codes have positions, all be the same position, and it will alienate fans because fans have all sorts of backgrounds and points of view. Tina McQueen, Daniel Wild, always a pleasure to have you two with me. Thank you for joining me tonight.